So here we have the plate we're going to use for the handbrake mount. It's about 2 millimeters thick and it's shaped like a U. It's 69 centimeters long by 11 centimeters wide. Note how I already drilled the holes for the pipe clamps and I cut a slot for the brackets. The slot should be marked and cut at 79 millimeters from the edge of the plate. This is to account for a 2 millimeter wide cut. The pipe center to center distance on the chair is 44.5 centimeters. So from the edge of the plate, you measure 12.25 centimeters. And then from that line, you measure 44.5 centimeters. And then the rest should be again 12.25 centimeters. I recommend to get clamping U-bolts with a 27 to 29 millimeter ID. So here I show the order in which the parts should be welded. First we have the back or stopper, so the handbrake has something to rest against. It should be welded along the outside edge only. If you weld it on the inside, it will add material and the brake might have fitment issues. This part is supposed to represent the handbrake, and we must place it in the operating position because the L brackets we will add are thinner than the handbrake base. They are 1.7 millimeters for the brackets and 3 millimeters for the handbrake. So here you can see the brackets. They are 90-degree L brackets. Then we take the brackets and we put them into place. So this is how the brackets should look once they are in place. This side I am showing right now is the outside, and it's the side you're going to weld later along this seam. And this side is the inside, which is closest to the U-clamps, the U-bolts. And we're going to weld along this inside seam and this outside seam. And then on the top, there's also an outside seam, which is the only place where we're going to weld on the top side. So now notice how the stopper is on one edge of the mounting plate. And for the other side, the stopper is also on the same edge of the mounting plate. You will need 2 sets of brackets and stoppers. Make sure both brackets are bent to 90 degrees, as I showed in the video, not as I picture them right now. The length for the brackets is somewhere around 10.5 centimeters long and 3 centimeters wide. Here I show how the brackets are supposed to be placed. On the left is the outside bracket, which should be welded last, and on the right is the inside bracket, which should be welded first. On the bottom, both sides, and on the top, the side that is facing the U-bolt clamp. Here is after the welds were placed. They won't win any beauty awards, but they will suffice. The guy who placed these charged me 20 bucks for MIG welding the whole job. Again, notice how on the inside bracket, which is top in this picture, there are welds on both sides of the bracket, and the outside bracket, which is bottom in this picture, only has welds on the bottom side and on the corner. This is a top view of the previous image. Here you can see that the inside bracket, which is top in this picture, has welds on the top only on the side where the U-bolts go. The outside bracket, which is bottom in this picture, has no welds on the top except for a few spots to join it with the stopper. Here is a shot of the weld that the stopper should have. It is one continuous bead on the outside of the stopper. And this is how it should look like when all the welds are done and the brackets are in place. Do keep in mind that when welding, the heat will warp the mounting plate, so you might want to check for that and straighten out any bends in the metal before finishing it. Here it is with the handbrake in position. Some weld spatter got into the slot where the handbrake goes and made it a bit hard to slide it in, but with a Dremel cutoff wheel I was able to clean the slot a bit. I will recommend get some silicone lube and put a few drops in there after painted so that the handbrake can slide nicely in and out. Here is one of the U-bolts, which I painted black. The color for the chair is jet black, but sadly I only had access to Rust-Oleum ink black. Here is the mounting plate during painting. I cleaned up the welds a bit. I completely wire brushed the mounting plate and then cleaned the surface with some paint thinner before painting it. I believe I applied 2 coats of Rust-Oleum ink black. Here it is painted and mounted to the chair. The PCB for the handbrake was not yet mounted because I was just testing for fitment here. Here you can see how far the handbrake sits from the strap that says challenge. The position and height is good and not uncomfortable at all, even with 100% force applied to the brake. Here I pull on the handbrake to the max a few times to show that the plate only has the tiniest bit of flex under load. It's actually quite sturdy. Here I show the swapping method of the handbrake to the other side. On my plate, because of the spatter that got into the slot and not taking into account the warping that occurred, it's a bit of a tight fit. Here I show the distance the tip of the handbrake is from the shifter. There is quite a bit of clearance between the two. In this picture you can see the PCB controller for the handbrake. It's glued on with a couple stacks of double-sided tape because there are some screws that do not let it sit flush with the mounting plate. The cable coming out of the handbrake can't be tied down because over time the flexing might break the cable and you will be out of a handbrake. You can also see a zip tie, which is holding the extra length of USB cable to the USB hub under the seat. I also placed some strips of rubber around the tube where the U-bolts go to protect the paint finish on the chair. Here are some pictures of the complete chair and the position of the shifter and handbrake. First is the right hand drive with right hand e-brake, which is most JDM cars. Notice the coiled RJ12 cable, which I mentioned in the post previously. Then we have right hand drive with left hand e-brake. Some buses and US cars have this arrangement. Also notice the coiled RJ12 cable. It was not removed to swap the shifter. Then we have right hand drive with right hand e-brake. And lastly, we have left hand drive with right hand e-brake. Here we can see the chair is completely folded with the shifter and the handbrake mounted. The shifter is the largest of the attachments, but it does not protrude much farther than the small leg that's used to stabilize the chair when you unfold the motor base. Here you can see the handbrake is perpendicular to the tube it's mounted on. And you can also notice on the bottom left that small stabilizing leg I mentioned earlier. Here is the shifter up close when the chair is folded. Here you can see how far the wheelbase sits from the headrest. I also modified this part on my chair because I'm 6'3", 193 centimeters, and the chair was a bit upright for my taste. I also play exclusively in VR, so the back of the headrest usually had me in a forward-leaning position. Lastly, here are the pedals secured to the cross member of the chair. This prevents the chair from opening up, and it's held by the Velcro strap on the right. I did not trust the Velcro to hold it securely, so I added a releasable zip tie just in case, which is white colored.